It's my therapy, I'll be honest. It's my Brexit Hour therapy here on Talk Radio. And this week I am joined in the studio by two very lovely people. One is a regular contributor to the show. He's been here, I think it's your third time on the show. It's Jason Hunter, who's a Remainer and campaigner for Remain. Also is a trade negotiator with experience of trade negotiating. Jason, thank you for coming back. And first time on my show, but you've been on Talk Radio before a few times. It's Tom Harwood. He's a reporter of Guido Fawkes. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. A little bit wet, but other than that, got caught in the rain on the way in.
Got caught in the rain. Right. So the question that we've been asking, gents, today, and I deliberately asked the sort of an unanswerable question, but it has been the question of, can Theresa May deliver both on the Brexit referendum result, so honour that result, and also deliver on getting us a deal that will see us better off than what we had before? Because I hark back to the referendum, and we were told as a nation that if we voted to leave, things would be better. We'd have more opportunities. We'd be richer. We'd have, let me bring out the what was the phrase? The control of our money, our laws and our borders, which was a wonderful thing because that's what everybody wants and we'll be better off than what we have now. How's it going and how can she deliver this? Of course, let's have a look at what's happened recently. Yesterday we lost Joe Johnson, Transport Minister. Quite an extraordinary resignation blog post that he put up there. And the more you look at it, it becomes a sort of this choice, which is, it's not great for anybody, because I've kind of managed to narrow it down to two things. Either you have a border around Northern Ireland, whether it's in the Irish Sea or a land border with Ireland, and you get to do all the trade deals that you want. Or if you want to order the Good Friday Agreement, right, you kind of have that Brino, Brexit in name only, because in order to keep the free-flowing movement, some sort of customs union, some sort of single market membership to require no borders, then that means that you won't really get the Brexit. Tom's shaking his head vociferously. I'm going to go to Tom first. Tom, you're on.
Oh, God, so many points there that you raised. I'm just on Northern Ireland. There's already a border there. The dichotomy that you proposed. Yes, there is.
I've been there.
There's a tax border. There's a currency border.
In the same way that we have different taxes in Northern Ireland to the rest of Great Britain. They've got different rates of corporation tax in Northern Ireland to the rest of us.
Sure, but
they're already treated differently.
The idea that there can't be differences north and south of the border,
or between GB and Northern Ireland.
No, I mean, between GB and Northern Ireland, when it comes to the actual fundamentals of your regulatory structure of your country, I mean, that's a bit different.
Like gay marriage, or abortion law, or LGBT rights, or corporation taxes.
There's
lots of differences.
Is what defines you as a nation, really, in terms of how you're interacting with the outside world.
We will agree to disagree on that, because
federalism within your country is different from how you interact as a nation with other nations.
Can I just on the one thing that I see what you're getting at, but let's all agree, just so we don't have this sort of like, I don't want to get into Kellyanne Conway territory where one of you is going, well, I've got alternative facts, right? A fact is a fact. Yeah. And at the moment, there is no land border in Northern Ireland. There's 350 miles and there's no land border. And by that,
there's no customs border, you mean?
There's no border checks, there's no cameras, there is no border.
I mean, on certain issues there are borders,
on
other issues there aren't.
Tom, are you telling me there is a land border in Northern Ireland?
There is no customs border in Northern Ireland.
Right, so there's no land border in Northern Ireland.
There are no checkpoints, and I don't think there would be otherwise.
Right, but how would that be?
I'll tell you how it would be.
Yeah, go on.
Even in the event of no deal, Leo Varadkar has said that they will not be training border guards or dogs or putting up any infrastructure whatsoever. The UK government has expressly said there is no situation in which we will be putting up border guards, putting up posts, checking goods in and out on the border. And even Jean-Claude Juncker, when he appeared in the Irish Parliament a couple of weeks ago, he said directly to a Sinn Féin MP that the EU would not be coming in and putting up this mythical border. So I'm not sure where the idea that these sort of fairies are going to come and appear out of nowhere and be creating infrastructure. No one is going to build the infrastructure.
Brilliant.
What will actually happen is there'll be a bit of a fudge, and we'll accept that there could be a bit of smuggling either side of the of the border, and someone might, in the worst case scenario, take that to the WTO. But at the end of the day,
you didn't put that on the side of a big red bus. There's going to be more smuggling.
Sorry, between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.
Taking back control of our borders, right, means leaving them wide open for smugglers to go run back and forth.
No. I mean, Vote Leave said repeatedly throughout the referendum that the common travel area, which is what most people think of when we talk about taking back control of borders, with regard to people crossing borders, the common travel area in Northern Ireland, there is no situation, deal or no deal, where that is threatened.
Okay, I want to hear your thoughts if you're listening to this. What do you think of our question? Can Theresa May both honour the Brexit vote and deliver a deal that will see us better off? That's what was promised. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. You could tweet us at Talk Radio. Jason, apparently there is some sort of border anyway. It may not be a land border, but it's a customs border. And we can figure out some sort of deal where we kind of go, oh, OK, we'll leave that bit open, but we're free to negotiate our own trade deals, which I assume, Tom, that's what you're after. You know, to negotiate our own, Tom's nodding, our own trade deals with the rest of the world. And that will not require us to have a border, a land border now, between the EU, effectively, because that's what Ireland is part of, the EU and us, who is going to be considered as a third country. Go.
All this, we can negotiate new free trade deals all over the world. The fact is, 90% of our trade is already covered by free trade agreements and cooperation agreements all over the world. 27 members of the largest single market on the planet are right on our doorstep. We've got the best possible free trade agreement it's possible to create or write with these people. They're completely frictionless, tariff-free. It's expanding constantly. We've got over 34 other international trade agreements with 60 other countries that we trade with around the world, including dozens of cooperation agreements
Not
with the United States
with
the United States of America, for example. Japan, we've got trade deals with Japan, South Korea.
Japan
United
hasn't kicked in yet.
They're trading under it already. It's just not been ratified. Canada, all of the 90% of UK's trade is covered by EU trade agreements. So what we're going to do is tear them all up and then try and negotiate something that's worse than we've already got. That's what Brexit means in terms of trade.
On the contrary, because Liam Fawkes was in Japan just a couple of months ago, and they were saying how when we roll over the agreement that the EU signed with Japan, we'll be able to open it up to more sectors. Because actually, the UK,
you're absolutely categorically wrong on that, because Liam Fawkes has been around the world twice.
Sure.
Liam Fawkes has been around the world twice. The Department for International Trade have consulted on 4 potential trade deals. One with the United... Look at the Department of International Trade website.
I know you say look at the website, but actually,
the government's website. The government's
comes...
Department of International Trade website, they've consulted on 4. United States of America, who've already objected to our WTO schedules. The New Zealand and Australia, who've also objected to our WTO schedules. And the third one is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, whose countries have said, well, we've just signed this deal with the European Union, give it 5 years and we might start talking. We want to focus on the EU right now.
Did you listen to Shinzo Abe a couple of weeks ago where there could not have been more positive noises coming out of specifically Japan, but also the other, whatever the TPP is called now, the IE something TPP. Those countries could not be keener to have the 5th largest economy in the world exceed to the... I mean, it depends what measure it is. A lot of them say...
Well, if you use Her Majesty's Treasury figures...
using Treasury figures worked out so well during the referendum. What was it, 500,000 unemployed?
Here's the interesting thing, though, Tom. Here's the interesting thing. And my job as a journalist, I've said this on the show many, many times before. Don't worry, we'll get back to Brexit. Is I spend most of my time trying to figure out what I can pass on to my listeners, which, to the best of my knowledge, is accurate and correct. And here you are saying basically government treasury figures I'm not going to accept those. So
it's why the OBR was set up in 2010, because everyone knows the Treasury.
So which figures do you like to pick then?
I mean...
The IEA? Institute of Economic Affairs?
No, I usually go by the ONS.
The ONS.
But let's be real here. Let's not pretend that this is some kind of big conspiracy. Everyone accepts that the Treasury's figures are bogus. That's why George Osborne, hardly a big Brexiteer, set up the Office of Budget Responsibility in 2010, because Chancellor after Chancellor manipulates Treasury figures in order to get the best looking ones for their particular quarter, their particular time. Well, exactly, which is why we shouldn't really be listening to politicians.
But how are the OBR figures doing for you? They're not really that great for Brexit either.
Well, okay, let's look at quarterly growth. This quarter, we are growing faster than Germany, Italy.
We're not.
Italy
we are. Germany's figures...
Germany's figures are 0.4, we're 0.6.
Okay.
Woohoo!
What's really
Ain't that great,
It's
folks?
faster than France.
So
it's
what's
faster than-
really
but more
interesting,
importantly-
Tom, is because I knew you were coming on the show and I knew we were going to get onto this.
Sure.
So I looked at the article on Guido, and you make that
This
claim.
is Q on Q.
But this is really interesting. Quarter on quarter trading, and you got them from tradingeconomics.com. Okay.
No, I mean, so
but-
we got them from a variety of sources. The
Variety
UK
of sources,
published.
but the thing is that the German figures are not out yet.
No,
They're
the
going to come
German
out
ones-
in 3 days.
The German
so this
ones
is
are
a
the only ones that
forecast.
aren't. So the German ones are the only ones that aren't. France's came out 2 weeks ago.
Okay, but you
UK's
just told
came
me
out
that
on
we've
Friday.
grown more than Germany.
Yeah, so
but the figures are not out yet.
So Germany's the only one in that article that we actually put a little asterisk by the and a link to it because it's a forecast.
Because it's a
It was
forecast.
because we published it on the day that the UK
Okay.
figures came out.
'Cause the
so
actual-
all the other G7 countries that we referenced there, we've growing faster than all of the other European G7 countries, and it's a well-referenced stand-up.
though,
apart from
Just-
Germany,
Tom, sorry.
Germany, whose figures haven't come out yet.
And let
But
me
I'll-
clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're talking about sort of the fastest growing in the G7. The UK was the fastest growing in the global group of 7 strongest economies on the planet before the referendum. Since the referendum, we've been performing as one of the worst economies on our entire continent. Greece has been growing faster than the UK's economy for the last 2 years.
Greece's
Tom
economy
Guido-
contracted by 25%. Of
Tom
course, it's going to be
and
growing
Guido-
faster because it's in such a pit.
Tom and Guido have just pulled out these latest figures based on a single set of 3 months, and they're cheering and celebrating 3 months worth of figures where we had a little tiny blip.
Can you not accept that
Look
the
at-
independent OBR has been saying that we're experiencing stronger growth than forecast?
No,
that the
forecast when?
Chancellor had more money to play with
Go
in
back
his
to
budget
2015,
because growth
2016.
is stronger
We were
than
the fastest
expected.
growing in the
I don't
world.
want this conversation to just descend into us arguing about a point something increase and a point, because I don't think
Because it's
people
pointless.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Very good.
I'll do the jokes around here, thank you. But well done. But suffice it to say one thing, and this is why I get very confused and very upset when very partisan on both sides, because you can hold up the canary from the other side.
Oh, so I think
and
that's a little bit
and you've got
unfair.
Guido on the other side, Westminster and Spiked and all those things, where everybody uses figures that they like. But look, going by your own figures here, okay, you've made an assumption for the Germany figures, which are not out yet. Right. And it is true we are growing faster than Italy and France. They're not doing so well.
For 3 months.
For 3 months. But you fail, though, for example, with the same people, the same forecasters, who you kind of hold it up and go, look at what they forecasted for Germany, and we're better than Germany at the moment. But look at what they forecast from the UK. Fourth quarter, 0.2%. Quarter one, 2019, 0.1%.
Fourth quarter growth is usually lower because it's December, the weather's bad.
First quarter of 20... Yeah, but look at us. Look at us. 0.2%, 0.1%, 0.4%, 0.5%. Look at Germany. The same exact quarters, 0.4%, 0.5%, but they're way ahead of us. But you failed to mention that. So
I mean,
to me, when I look at stuff that you put out, I kind of think, well, why are we cherry picking? Why is every side trying to cherry pick?
It appears to me what you've done there is taken an article talking about G7 countries. You've picked the one country where the figures weren't out yet. We picked the most reputable forecasts that we could find.
Sure, and I'm saying that according to the same reputable forecasters, the future is looking really bleak for the UK, but you don't want to talk about that.
The point of the article is that Europe is experiencing a slowdown in growth. No one contests that, whereas actually growth in the US and in even Japan and Canada is looking stronger. And really where we want to be looking for the future opportunities of growth and investment and trade isn't so much to the sclerotic European Union, it's the exciting growing regions of the world, especially when we're dealing in services, which are 80% of our economy, and rely more in language and custom than geographical proximity.
But the European economy is not shrinking, it is growing.
It's growing slowly, so the growth is slower.
From a very, very high point. If you look at the Commonwealth countries around the world...
I'm sorry, where have you been for the last 5 years?
Well,
we had a Eurozone crisis.
Let's look at GDP per capita of the Commonwealth, 76 plus countries, right? The average GDP per person is about $3,400.
That's including some of the poorest countries in the world.
Also
the Commonwealth
including Canada.
Isn't a trading entity, so I'm not quite sure why you're talking about it.
We were told by Vote Leave and the Leave EU campaigns that we don't need the EU because we can go and trade with the Commonwealth.
That's not what was said.
Oh, now you're going to tell me that they didn't promise
I
that
worked
17
on that campaign.
million.
I can tell you what
You're going to tell me that 70 million Turkish people, they didn't say that either, coming to the UK.
No, they
You didn't tell me that 39 million Bulgarians
are
and
in the process
Romanians.
of joining the EU, which is just a fact.
It's not.
It's a long fact.
I mean, it literally
20,
is.
20 years.
I mean, you can
tried.
look at the accession countries on the European Commission website if you want to.
Oh,
yes, but they are not joining. You said they're joining.
They're in the process of joining.
Does that mean they will join?
Yes, they are currently on course to join.
When you know that they will join?
They're in the
that's news to
process
me.
of joining.
So that they will join.
What do you know about the process?
Yes, all of the. I mean, David Cameron said
Okay.
he wants to pave the road from Ankara to Brussels. Of course, like
Okay.
it's UK
so
government
according
policy.
to you,
It's
Turkey
UK
is joining the EU.
Well, yes, that's just a fact.
Fine. Okay. Well.
Like, I don't see.
We'll deal with that in a
Sorry,
second.
I don't see how you can contest
Okay.
that. I mean, they might be joining very slowly.
Look,
the joining process might stop in the future, but at the moment,
let's
they're
stop
joining the
arguing.
EU.
I think it's very, very boring if we're going to get stuck into arguing about figures.
It seems like we've been rehashing the same debate for the last 4 years.
Okay, so here's the debate. Here's the question. In your mind, okay, I know what Jason's mind is, but I'm going to come to him in a second. But in your mind, in answer to my question, can Theresa May deliver on maintaining the result of the referendum and making the UK a better place than it was outside the EU? You think she can?
Definitely.
How can she do that?
By leaving the single market and the customs union.
And having a border in Northern Ireland?
No, that doesn't necessitate a border in Northern Ireland. You can mitigate all of the effects of a border in Northern Ireland by doing checks away from the border, by having trusted trader schemes.
Okay, so why? Hey, I'm going to get Jason in a second, but here's my question. Why? You say that with such confidence.
Of course.
Okay. And yet, for 2 years, you've had David Davis in charge, right? An ardent Brexiteer.
Yep.
And yet he has not been able to deliver that.
So
what's the problem?
I contest that point. He's not in charge. The person who's in charge of
he
the
was in charge for 2 years.
No, he wasn't.
So you're going to blame the civil service.
No, I'm going to blame the Prime Minister,
Theresa May.
So here's what.
Basically, we're going to end up. No, you will. But
Yeah.
basically, what we're getting to was, you got the result that you wanted.
Yes.
You had a Brexiteer in charge.
No.
You did.
No, we didn't.
Tom, we're not going to argue about facts.
Let's go back to the go back to the Conservative leadership campaign of 2016.
I'd rather not.
Me neither. The week after the vote, what you had was a group of predominantly Remain voting politicians who were very, very angry and upset at the result of the referendum, and sought to mitigate it by installing a Remainer as Prime Minister. And they picked the most boring possible individual to try and calm everyone down. Turns out that calmed down the markets on the day.
Andrea Leadsom had the chance.
And MPs didn't. No, they didn't vote. No, Michael Gove lost in a ballot of MPs because all of the vast majority, 2/3 of MPs voted Remain. So what they did from the start.
Remain. It's
What
about
they did
whether you
from the
want to
start
vote for
was
somebody who lies to the public.
This is what they did from the start. They saw Brexit as a bad thing, as something to be mitigated rather than an opportunity to be seized. That's your opinion. Actually, quite a lot of people, the majority of people, don't agree with you.
Alexis asked you about the opportunity a minute ago, and you haven't named any
And this is
yet.
the problem, because the majority of MPs from the start have disagreed with the decision and has sought to frustrate it from the start. And what we have ended up with is someone in number 10 who profoundly disagrees with the direction of the country. She feels it's sort of the opposite of Jeremy Corbyn, right? Jeremy Corbyn voted Leave but pretends to want to remain. Theresa May voted Remain and pretends to want to leave. We're in a bizarre situation.
I'm going to have to go to a break. We've heard what you think. Next up, I want to hear from Jason, because I want him to answer the question, and I want listeners to answer the question. How can Theresa May deliver a deal which honours both the result of the referendum and see us better off than we were before? Jason, can she do it?
No,
Why not?
She's promised the impossible. Vote Leave and Leave EU promised the impossible. We know that they lied to the country. They even sat in parliamentary select committees and admitted that they lied to people. They broke the law. They broke electoral law. They overspent their budgets, but by 10% to get a 2% vote swing. The entire campaign was based on fraud. Boris Johnson is calling out David Cameron, saying World War III will happen if we vote to leave. George Osborne saying we need an emergency budget immediately after the day after the referendum because the economy is going to crash immediately. The entire referendum was based on fraud.
Okay.
Now, if you still think that that's okay, you don't believe in democracy. What you believe in is Brexit.
No.
And that's an issue. So she can't deliver what was promised.
Okay, but what I don't want to do is go back on, because what happens is you get stuck into he said, she said, so-and-so lied, but then so-and-so lied, and you get basically political point scoring, which doesn't solve anything. But we are where we are now. Yeah. We are where we are now.
Headed for no deal.
Headed for no deal, but is it possible? Because I've narrowed it down to those two choices that I put up in the beginning of the show. I know Tom disagrees, but I want to hear your thoughts, Jason. That I see it. The only possible choices you have is you become what Joe Johnson sort of, and actually his brother Boris Johnson has said in response to the Chequers deal, you either become a vassal state and you get Brino, Brexit in name only, which means you're sort of in a sort of customs union, but we won't call it that because it frightens Brexiteers, so we'll call it a customs arrangement. And we sort of have a single market for goods, but we'll call it something else that sounds fancy, so we don't scare everybody. But it does ultimately mean that you can avoid having a border either in the Irish Sea or in Northern Ireland, but it also means that you're stuck and Brexiteers are unhappy because you can't have your own trade deals. Of course, Remainers are unhappy because you're thinking, well, what's the point of all this? Because nothing really much has changed and we've just lost extra benefits like free movement of people, if you saw that as a benefit, of course. But, so that's your one choice. Or you have a hard border in Northern Ireland because you will be outside of the EU, or you have the sort of the annexing, as Brexiteers like to call it, of Northern Ireland, and then you have a border in the Irish Sea. So am I oversimplifying? Have I got something completely wrong?
No.
What's your view on that?
That's pretty much it. And both of those are unacceptable solutions. Tomorrow's Remembrance Sunday. Tom's sitting here wearing a poppy. We need to remember the millions upon millions of people that have died in the First World War and the Second World War. Since the EU's been created, its fundamental principle is to create peace on our continent. You know, we have not had wars since the EU was set up. And that's first and foremost. After you say, OK, well, great, now we're talking, we're trading with each other, we're less likely to be fighting and killing each other. And that's the point of the EU. The fact that we also have all the added benefits of being in a single market, the largest single market on the planet, and the ability that gives us to develop strong trade deals all over the world within that group of people. If we now try and leave all of that, and we fall back onto WTO rules, for example, which is what's lauded around left and right. One of the basic fundamentals of world trade is you have to be able to measure, check, and control the value and the volume of goods that are coming in and out of your country, crossing your borders.
Yeah.
So that other countries know what tariffs to apply on the volume of goods, what the country-specific quotas are, so they can measure the volume of the goods. And if we have no border on Northern Ireland, and a truck is coming down the road from the Republic into the north, who knows what's in the back of that truck? You know, they say, oh, we can use technology, we can do checks away from the border. But unless you've got somebody away from the border watching the truck be loaded with televisions, for example, how do you know it's not being loaded with cigarettes? Just because the piece of paper says, yeah, it's full of televisions. When it arrives in Northern Ireland, who knows what it is?
But what about people who still say, and I know that there was a report that was it called Border 2.0, which was actually an EU written report of how we can have technology solve the Irish border issue. What about people who are saying, look, there are technological abilities. We can do what's happening in Norway, for example, where you have customs checks away from the border, which means you don't have to have infrastructure on the border.
But
so what about that as a solution?
They still do. The same as Switzerland. If you look at the Swiss border going from the EU into Switzerland, there are tailbacks of trucks 6 to 8 hours constantly because they've all got to have a piece of paper and that's got to be checked. So you can do the checks of what the goods and stuff away from the border, but you've still got to have somebody saying, OK, what's in the back of your truck, looking at the piece of paper, the carnets. And you talk to Kieran, the van driver, you know, he's done 1 million miles in Europe. He's crossed every border from Gibraltar to the Arctic Circle and Ukraine back to the UK. He's in and out of Dover and Calais port every single week. He'll tell you how hard it is to get into Norway and into Switzerland and non-EU countries. And they're still in the European Economic Area. And it's still difficult. If we now leave, we've made it illegal under the EU Withdrawal Act that received royal assent in July this year. Section 10.2b will tell you that the UK government cannot put in new checks, controls or technological measures on the border in Ireland. Now, what the EU's position is that we should never, ever put a border back on the island of Ireland. There should be no more checks and controls because the Good Friday Agreement is the peace agreement. It's lasted 20 years. And we cannot go back to those troubles. People died. Thousands and thousands of kids were maimed. The punishments from the paramilitaries in the north and the real IRA in the south are just appalling. I don't know if you saw the Northern Irish Justice Department just released a series of adverts telling parents not to take their teenage children to these appointments and these punishment beatings. because the paramilitary in the north of Ireland are still carrying these things out. And if you've got it, and they run all the gambling machines in the pubs, they run all the tobacco, they run all the alcohol smuggling in that part of the world. And if your teenager breaks into a machine or does something wrong, then the Northern Irish paramilitaries are sending an appointment, a place and a time when they need to bring their kids along to be shot through the kneecaps. This is now.
We don't want that repeat.
I find the exploitation of this issue just extraordinary.
But we're not exploiting it. We're saying we do not want to go back to it.
Why are you saying it's an exploitation of an issue?
I'm guessing you weren't around.
In the kneecaps.
No, not me. This is the Northern Irish Justice Department putting out an advertising campaign telling
go
parents.
Back to something that's happening now. I mean, this is
no. That's
what's
just
happening,
the edge of it.
What has happened with this issue is desperately sad because it's become a partisan beating stick with which Remainers seek to.
Okay, we're talking about peace. We're talking about peace.
And you have talked about nothing but your rosy view of everything on the continent being fine and dandy, when actually people march through the streets of Germany burning effigies of Angela Merkel. Fascist parties are in most parliaments across the EU now. The idea that this is a harmonised continent of puppies and rainbows.
Can I just say, by the way, the largest growing party in Germany are the Greens. So let's just stop talking about this.
So in the most recent
huge rise.
I'm sorry. The AfD have gone from 4% to 17% in the German polls, just because the Greens are at 20%, which is basically a swap out for the SDP because the SDP are down. This is not.
But that remains to be seen.
You're ignoring the fact that there are 97
fascists in the Bundestag.
Yeah, but
you're saying that 87. No, Tom, your numbers.
The largest.
Think about your numbers.
Sure.
You said 17% voted for the. That's 83% of the population did not vote for a far right. Look at Sweden. Look at Sweden. 86% of the population.
We're talking about percentages and numbers. But Tom,
15 years ago, there were basically no fascists in European parliaments. Now there are 100 in the German Bundestag, and you're just saying, "Oh, it's fine. It's only 17%. We can ignore it." No, there is a massive problem that has been exacerbated and abetted by this blasé attitude of European elites.
And helped by your website.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
not.
Who
are the European elites?
The UK Parliament is the only one that doesn't have these radical right parties sitting in it. Actually,
have
what
you
we've
not
seen,
heard Jacob Rees-Mogg recently?
I'm sorry, you're calling Jacob Rees-Mogg a proto-fascist. Come on, really? When we're looking at the UK opinion polls with regard to attitudes to migration, whatever, we are way more tolerant than almost any country in Europe.
Well, when it comes to like Viktor Orban. Yeah.
I mean, literally. So
why
Viktor
did
Orban is in charge of Hungary.
Why did the Conservatives in the European Parliament vote to support Viktor Orban?
They didn't. They abstained on an issue with regards to subsidiarity.
It
was a subsidiarity issue.
They voted in favour of Viktor Orban.
No, they didn't.
I can pull up all the stats for you.
We're
not going to have an argument of facts, Tom. We're not going to have an argument of facts.
But you understand the difference between saying that that subsidiarity should be respected within the EU, and the EU shouldn't be allowed to just go in and chastise a government for doing X, Y, and Z.
But they voted. I mean, they voted for the EU doing just that when it came to exactly the same vote in Malta. So it wasn't a vote of idealism of the EU should not be able to go in and tell governments what to do, because they were okay with the EU doing that when it came to Malta, but they were not okay doing that when it came to Viktor Orban.
When was the Malta vote?
I don't have the exact date, but I will give it to you and I'll put it on Twitter.
Because I'd imagine that's before the Conservative Party became so.
But what I'm trying to say is that you're trying to say we need to be away from the EU. Or at least this is what I'm understanding you're saying.
So you're saying
we want to be outside of the EU because there's this massive far right movement and we want to steer clear of that.
That's not the reason we should. I'm saying I'm making a comparison between this idea that Europe is such a lovely place and the UK is a rainy little fascism island.
That's your words.
Those are your words that you've just made up. I have never said that the EU is a perfect institution. In fact, the EU
you were opining about peace and saying that leaving it would lead to war.
The EU is possibly quite flawed, but we're better off inside fixing it than outside. That's my personal opinion. However, you cannot disagree with the fact that the initial idea behind the formation of the EU was to keep the peace.
I
because countries that trade with each other tend to go less into armed conflict.
I totally agree with you there, and I'm in favour.
And that was the initial thinking. I'm wrong.
Yes, totally.
Okay, give me my history lesson.
I will.
I'm looking forward to this.
You look at the founders of the European Union. You look at Schuman and at three of them. I forget their exact names. You look at what they are talking about, using the language of peace to justify the creation of a federal state. It's statecraft, not peace building. This is an ideological project about building a new country to compete with the United States of America and the then Soviet Union. They wanted a third political bloc. It's a political project, not a peace project, not an economic project. And it always has been. That's why it has an anthem and a flag and approaching to have an army. And I mean,
the end result of it is that we've had peace in 28 countries for the last 60, 70 years.
There hasn't been peace across the continent of Europe. I mean, as recently, look
you could talk the Balkans or something like that.
Of course. I mean,
but we worked together to solve that.
But I mean,
working with other
Europe
countries
isn't the only place that's been peaceful for the last 20 years.
Harry has called from Portsmouth, and I want to get Harry on the line. Harry, welcome to the show. What do you want to say?
Oh, yeah. Hello there, Alexis.
Hello, mate.
Sorry?
Hello, mate.
Yeah. I know you've asked specific questions, but the conversation revolves and revolves. Jason's mentioned the Swiss border. I'm not going to counter, apart from the Swiss have never been keen on lorries going through their country. So for decades now, they've wanted traffic to go by train. So my opinion is that delays on the Swiss border are partly an encouragement to make more freight go on the rail. That is just my observation.
Yeah, and it's a good one, Harry. It's a good one. That doesn't explain Norway, though. It also doesn't explain why the UK government, Ministry of Transport, have ordered the Highways Agency to shut down 10 miles of the M26 and close down 2 lanes of the M20.
I can move on to that.
Block the M25. Why on earth are our UK government doing that? It's not because we don't like trucks.
Well, I can move on to that. There is a slight solution at the moment. You know how the Green people always say, take the dirty, filthy lorries off the road, put everything on the train. Well, trains are only taking a shorter while to clear, because instead of having 100 lorry drivers, you may realise there's only one driver up the front of a train.
Yep, that's true.
And when they clear a train, they do it quicker. Now, back in March, Calais announced they're going to put in 4 X-ray machines, which will X-ray a train in 10 minutes.
Yep.
You keep going on about paperwork and all this sort of lark, but if for example, as an emergency, every truck was to be put on the train at the Channel Tunnel, or freight was loaded elsewhere, then all those so-called quick delays that will go on maybe for 2 or 3 months, according to whoever you listen to, wouldn't exist.
Harry, just one question is that if you're advocating that every lorry then comes in by rail, then that means everything has to come through the Eurotunnel.
Yes, but the thing is, the Calais side have already they've got 1 machine on the go now. They're going to have up to 4, and they'll do a train in 10 minutes flat, X-ray it and send it through 10 minutes flat. Eurotunnel, the organisation, have announced this week they seem to be quite relaxed about it. They're saying they've got all the space that was originally built at Folkestone and Calais for the actual Eurotunnel trains, so they've got space. The M26 problem, I say, why wasn't that 2-lane motorway built as a 3-lane? The extension why wasn't that built as a motorway?
Well, it isn't, though, so we can't really do much about that. Jason, what about getting everything in by rail?
There's a couple of points here. Firstly, we've been talking about them checking the goods going into France in Calais and coming out of France. Now, that's an EU border. That's not a British border. Now, if we leave the European Union, we're a third country. We need to have our own checks as well. So whatever they built in Calais, we need to replicate. So we need to be able to measure, check and control the volume and value of goods that go in and out of Great Britain. The French are not going to send us all this information about what they're doing over there. It's just not the way the world works. Secondly, the Eurostar train driver and the train guards, they are currently certified as qualified to be able to drive those trains, and they're insured, and the insurance companies are insured to move those goods on the back of a train in the United Kingdom. The British insurance companies won't be able to insure that Eurostar train as a non-EU member state because we're outside the European Union. So the train driver will have to get out in Calais, and then a French driver will have to take over the train to take it down to Brussels or Lille or wherever it's going further down. Because the third paragraph of Article 50 is very, very clear. It says all the treaties cease to apply to the member state that's leaving the EU.
And you're assuming there will be no association agreements?
No, there's 750 plus of these different treaties. What's most important? Is it that train driver? Is it the truck driver's insurance? Or is it EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency, that makes sure we can refuel planes that are sitting in our airports? Or is it the Single Skies Agreement?
Your fundamental point, your point
Which one of these do you want to do first?
As soon as we leave the EU, that we will never talk to
we
any
will do
European
that. But answer me this, Tom.
So your argument is that it will be bad in the short term, but in the long term it will be fine.
Okay, how many years do you think it takes to negotiate a trade agreement? A simple one.
Well, I mean, it depends what your starting point is, how equivalent your economies are.
Take Switzerland, for example.
If you're going to take an average from the world, that's going to be wildly irrelevant.
Let's take Switzerland specifically.
No, let's not, because it's not comparable to where no, because it doesn't start from exactly the same starting point as the UK and the EU do.
That's the problem, though, Tom.
Even so, when there's political will, I mean, let's take the Australia-USA.
It's a really important piece.
I tell you what, we're going to come back to this because I have to go to a break, and also I have to say goodbye to Harry. Harry, I always appreciate your call. Thank you. That's Harry from Portsmouth. I want to hear from you. Do you think can Theresa May both honour the Brexit vote and deliver a deal that will see us better off? We can argue about how long it takes to do a deal. I take Tom's point that, of course, if we are going to go and negotiate a new trade deals, we're not starting from scratch because we've got a past history. I don't want to argue whether it's going to take a year, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, because I think
10.
Well, maybe even 10. But even if it just takes two is still too long.
Months.
But I don't want to get stuck on that. I want to find out, where do we go from here? Joe Johnson has just quit. We are told to expect more resignations coming up, and the three of us were discussing this before we came into the studio. And of course, it's Remembrance Sunday tomorrow. No one's going to want to do it on Remembrance Sunday. But come Monday, Tuesday, we're going to see more people walk out. Where is this going to leave Theresa May? Where can she go? Because she seems hell-bent, and she's the only one hell-bent on delivering this sort of checkers hybrid deal, which Tom, you as a Brexiteer don't like. He's nodding. And Jason, you don't like as a Remainer. So no one likes this apart from May. Callum has called from Cardiff. Maybe Callum's going to tell us what's going to happen. Callum, welcome to the show. What do you want to say?
Hi. I was basically going to say that I was a Brexiteer, but I'm increasingly becoming more and more pessimistic with our idea that we'd ever get a deal. At this point, I'm not quite sure whether or not it's better to not get a deal and default to WTO, or whether or not we should have just 2 years ago opted to go straight for the Norway option and cut all this out, because it doesn't seem she's not going to get anything through Parliament. Well, she's not going to get anything through the House.
Yeah,
I can't. I've looked at the numbers between the Brexiteers, like the in-between kind of more the ones that call themselves Brexiteers. They're just kind of pragmatic career politicians, and then the Remainers. And
Callum,
I can't see her getting any type of majority on any type of
no. Vote. I'm with you on that. And do you think that Joe Johnson's resignation actually, he's not one of the big hitters, but it's important enough because it sort of opens the gateway to those people that you're talking about, the people who are sort of in the middle. It opens that gateway to, well, I'm a Remainer and I'm going to vote against this because this just is... It gives an excuse to both Remainers and Brexiteers to say, look, this is not good enough. This is definitely not what 17.5 million people voted for, and it's definitely not what the other 16 million people who didn't want this in the first place are going to end up with. So do you think that maybe we're going to see more and more resignations, and perhaps, even though the government have said they have absolutely categorically no plans for a second vote, that perhaps that's kind of where we're heading? Because if Parliament cannot make up their mind, then surely it has to be put back to the British people.
Yeah, I can't can't really see a second referendum vote coming down the line just because I think it'll split the country completely in half.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Labour orchestrating something in the region of not allowing her manoeuvring to not allow her get a vote through Parliament, and then positioning themselves for a second for a new general election, where they will stand on the idea of, here's the deal we're going for, vote for us, Theresa May's been terrible, and that'll kind of be the second referendum vote in a way.
Well,
Generally how I see it.
Of course, I have to say, and I don't even want to open this can of worms right now, but what on earth are Labour going to stand for in a general election when it comes to Brexit? Because they have no idea.
I can tell you exactly what they're going to stand for now.
Can you tell Jeremy Corbyn, Callum?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to stand for jobs.
Right.
Whether or not that means being in the single market or not, we're not going to know. They're going to stand for the value of immigrants to the country. Whether or not that means moving to people, we're not going to know. They're not going to say. They're not going to say anything. They're going to talk about the budget difference as we leave the EU, but probably Diane Abbott's going to write it. And then
come on, Callum.
They
Keep it civil.
Are just still being vague, and they won't commit to anything because they know most of the traditional Labour base are leavers, but they know most of the new wave and most of Tony Blair's-esque of generation are all staunch Remainers, and they can't win either way. I mean, they can't win a general election without Scotland, so they can't not Remain anyway by that logic.
Jason Hunter.
Yeah,
some really good points there, Callum. But one thing I wanted to touch on that you said earlier in the call was we should just fall back onto WTO rules. I spent 2 solid days of meetings in Geneva. I flew out there to find out what that actually meant. And the way falling back onto WTO rules was explained to us was that imagine you were driving your car at 90 miles an hour along the motorway. You know, you've got your wife or your partner sitting in the passenger seat. Your kids are sitting behind you in the back seat. And you're driving along in 6th gear quite happily. And you put your clutch down. You put the car from 6th into 1st gear. And then you let the clutch out. That's the damage that we would do to the United Kingdom economy. Under every single model.
I'm not decided on it at all.
It's a lie. That's what it is, Callum. It's a lie that we can just fall back onto it so easily.
Okay, Callum, what were you about to say?
Well, I wouldn't call it a lie. I think everyone supporting WTO rules know there will be a really sharp stunt to the immediate stunt, but I believe everyone that thinks of backing onto WTO rules kind of fall into 2 camps, and one camp is people that kind of believe in British ingenuity to make it work, and the other camp are these kind of
factual people,
Thatcherite people who want free trade at all costs.
Oh, Thatcherite.
So Callum, just on that, I mean, do you know how many countries in the world trade solely on WTO rules?
Oh, I know they all have trade agreements, but
not a single one anywhere in the world.
That's what the interim period is for anyway. But
to do a trade deal, we need to do 87 trade deals just to get back to where we are. 87. Say each of them only takes a year.
You do have it from the.
I'm not saying it's. That's why I said I'm torn between the Norway option now, more pragmatically, and
Tom?
WTO. I'm still weighing them. And I am a Brexiteer, but I can't square the circle in my head between either of them because of the way this mess is playing out.
Yeah.
Tom, Callum is a Brexiteer, and he's looking to go Norway just to make the whole thing end.
Well, I think really the conversation around moving to WTO rules is so it's so false, because what we do is we take it in this like absolutist academic sense and not the realpolitik sense that it would actually happen. WTO rules doesn't mean no deals.
So can you say that again in English?
We're not looking at it
in reality, but we're looking at
we're looking at it. We're looking at it in an absolutist sense, not in a realpolitik sense. And under realpolitik, no deal doesn't mean we never talk to. No deal means that within hours we are signing agreements to roll over open skies.
Tom, can I just say the WTO Director General himself has said that it is, quote, very unlikely, end quote, that the UK to secure 164 WTO members agreements in the interim period. In that period, it's very, very unlikely that we'll secure those deals.
Which deals do you mean? Deals with third countries, or do you mean the sort of rollover deals to
deals
help
with people we want to trade with?
Oh, so with third country deals, it's pretty clear that those are going to be rolled over because they're mutually beneficial and there's no harm to third countries.
The only person that ever said that is Liam Fawkes.
No,
all the other countries are saying not.
You talk to any country around the world.
I have actually. I've travelled to many.
When did you last speak to Justin Trudeau?
Him directly, not recently.
Okay,
but
so
you have though, Tom.
No, I haven't. You have. I've heard exactly what he's said on this.
Right, so neither of you.
Multiple press conferences where he's. I mean, all of these leaders. Just because it doesn't appear on the DexU website doesn't mean that these mutually beneficial. DIT. Sorry. It doesn't mean that these.
So your attitude, basically, as I understand it, is
the third country deals are a red herring because the real WTO mitigation is about what happens between the EU and the UK. Things like can aeroplanes fly over, which is obvious.
That's got nothing to do with the WTO.
No. But this is about the.
Tom, it seems.
No. This is about the withdrawal agreement. Not having any mechanism. No withdrawal agreement. Falling out on WTO.
Yeah,
obviously,
it's our relationship with the EU rather than the rest of the world.
Exactly. And there will be multiple small deals done between the UK and the EU in days and weeks, not years and years, because there will be such pressure to do.
Okay, I hate to say it, but look, I'm trying to be objective here. Okay, I'm trying to do my job, and I feel that my job as a journalist is to be as objective and balanced and fair as possible. Okay, but I can't disengage my intellect in order to do that. Okay. No. I'm being serious. I know. Don't giggle, Jason.
No, but
I'm being serious because what you're saying to me is, look, the reality of it is different. You're looking at it factually. Yes, factually, the Open Skies finishes the day after we leave and everything. But you're saying to me, look, but the reality of it is something's going to happen. But look, let me just read. Let me finish.
That there are people here, not robots.
Let me finish, and you can come back. Okay. But I'm just telling you that I'm trying. Believe it or not, I am trying to meet you halfway because I live in this country. I'd like to carry on living in this country. I've got a spouse who's German who doesn't know whether she can stay or go, or she'll have to fill in a form in order to be given permission to stay in her own house with her own daughter and her husband, right? And how much that's going to cost.
Finally been settled.
No, it hasn't been settled.
Too late.
It hasn't been settled. It has not been settled.
Theresa May said.
Theresa May's a liar.
Guy Verhofstadt
so
just recently.
We're now living in a reality where Remainers won't even believe anything.
Jason, stay out of it for a second. Tom, I'm trying to meet you halfway, but you are telling me things like, yes, the law may be such, but the reality is, let me finish, but the reality is X, Y, and Z. But it's the same stuff that I've been hearing for the last 2 years. Getting out the EU can be quick and easy. The UK holds most of the cards. John Redwood. The day after we vote to leave, we hold all the cards and we can choose the path that we want. Michael Gove. There will be no downside to Brexit, only a considerable upside. David Davis. All these people use the exact same language you are using now. The difference being we are 2 years down the line, nothing has been sorted, and it looks like we're heading for no deal. I'm going to let you come back to me on that when I come back after the news. So have a long, hard think, but I have to go to the news. After the news, I can tell you that we are going to be talking to a very special guest. Kieran, the van driver, will be on the line with us. Callum, thank you very much for your call. That was Callum from Cardiff. You definitely got us going, so I appreciate your call. You are, for me, and genuinely, honestly, I mean that. I have no animosity towards you or Brexiteers. I know you're very passionate about what you believe in. And I'm trying to meet you halfway. And you are using the same language I was hearing before and after the referendum, which is, we hold all the cards, it's going to be the simplest deal in the way. And it's that attitude of, hey, it's all right, we're going to make it work, just trust us and believe in it. And when I ask you why it hasn't happened for 2 years, you're blaming all Theresa May. You're saying David Davis wasn't really in charge. Give me something with hard evidence. Tell me it's going to be all right because, hey, look at these facts, and these facts look good for our future.
Well, I mean, we can look at any economic facts of the last 2 years compared to the Treasury predictions or the Remain campaign predictions during the referendum. Clearly, there hasn't been an economic disaster. What Remainers say now is that, that's because we haven't left yet.
No, it's not.
What they'll say when we actually leave is they'll say, we're still fine because we're in a transition.
We're not fine.
And then they'll say, we're still fine.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but the reason why quite a lot of the forecast disasters didn't happen was because the day after Brexit, Mark Carney took some serious measures to prevent them from happening.
I think a lot of those measures were irrelevant.
For example, he gave
think
permission
that,
to the UK banking sector to lend out their emergency reserves. The clue's in the name, emergency reserves. The currency fell by 18%. The British pound is worth nearly 20% less than it was before the referendum. There's been a swing away from the United Kingdom of £300 billion of foreign direct investment.
We were the second highest receiver of FDI this year,
yeah, if
second
you measure
only
it
to
in
China.
British pounds,
But our investment in the city has fallen by 26%. Let me get
tens of thousands of jobs.
Let me get.
Sorry, tens of thousands of jobs have gone. You know, we have the highest unemployment since 1975.
50,000 in retail sector, 20,000 in the banking sector, just in the city of London.
Sorry, you realise that the way that like creative destruction within employment works. You know, some jobs are lost, more are gained. Like that's how the employment that's how employment in this country works.
Let's destroy another 2 million jobs.
Sorry, do you think no job should ever disappear? Like more jobs have been created than have been lost over the last 2 years. That's just, I mean, by hundreds of thousands.
Why are interest rates so low?
Why are interest rates so low globally? Like that's a question you should ask central bankers.
They're going up in other countries. When you have probably full employment, or 4% unemployment.
They haven't gone up in other countries yet. But
I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to come back to this because we've got our guest caller. It's Kieran, the van driver. Welcome to the show, Kieran.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well. You are in Paris, I beleave, right now. Are you?
No, I'm at home.
Oh, he's at home.
Yeah,
it's all right. I'm going to fire everyone behind the glass in a second. Kieran,
I was in Paris.
You were in Paris. Now, Kieran, tell everybody what you actually do for people who have not heard of Kieran, the van driver.
I've been running an express European transport business for about 15 years. I do regular contracts for same-day deliveries to Paris, Brussels, Cologne, Amsterdam, any of the sort of northwestern European cities with an easy reach of a 7 or 8 hour transit time, using, I must stress, the port of Calais and the Eurotunnel, which is imperative to making these jobs actually work. Now, it's not just me that does this sort of work. There's many of us that do. And I've got a question for Tom.
Okay.
I asked Jacob Rees-Mogg this question a few months ago, and he couldn't ask me.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, now, you hold me in high esteem.
I want to know, will the just-in-time European logistics industry survive when we leave the customs union, single market, and essentially become a third country?
I don't see why it wouldn't, no.
But do you have any proof that it's going to somehow survive?
I can't prove that any industry of like whether we remain or leave will survive. That's just a question about forecasting. And
no, but this,
future.
I mean, the just-in-time logistics industry serves the car plants.
Yep.
You've got medicines.
Of course.
You've got exhibitions. You've got AOG, which is aircraft on ground. You've got ADR, HAZChem deliveries, which go to the food processing plants.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously if we leave under a situation where there's no deal, there'll be friction for a time. But the idea that there's no just-in-time delivery in any other country around the world other than like within single markets or unions, of which there are very few around the world. There's like Mercosur, the EU, and like South Africa. Like that's it. The idea that there isn't just-in-time delivery between, for example, Canada and America is that I mean, there just is.
You do realise with the Canadian deal that we will have a physical customs border on every port in the UK going to the continent. There won't be a free border. There will be a physical border, which will require
of course. But you can make those customs checks. You can do them within seconds electronically. I mean, customs.
You need an agent. You need an agent to do those checks. You need to raise the paperwork.
No, I mean the idea that
collect those papers. You then need to go to one of two clearinghouses in Dover and Folkestone.
You can do pre-clearance and clearance like in transit. Like the idea that it has to be the way that it is now or is proposed to be is not true. I mean, technology is advancing at a spectacular pace, and I don't think that we should be viewing this through the sort of 1950s lens of clerks and paperwork sitting down and signing things off.
I'm pretty sure Kieran wasn't around in the 1950s.
Sorry?
Do the Swiss and Norwegians have a frictionless border?
I don't think that they have the capital or the impetus to create one.
Well,
I think we have much more. I mean, do the Swiss and Norwegians have a space program? No, but we're like firing rockets off from the north of Scotland. Like there are different things that we do as different countries.
The thing is, going back.
Can we bring it back to reality, please?
Sure.
Going back to one of your previous callers who said he wanted the Norwegian option. Now, the Norwegian option obviously involves us being in the single market out of the customs union.
Mm-hmm.
That requires a physical border.
Yep.
Now, one of my friends yesterday was in Steinsund on the border for 6 hours, stuck at customs, and he transports medicine in temperature-controlled vans, which is incredibly urgent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's 6 hours he was there.
It's a wonder any country outside of Europe has medicine, mate.
Listen, I'm talking about Europe. We trade with our closest neighbours. We're 20 miles away from the French port of Calais, from Dover. You know, we're not going to start sending car components for production lines in containers from Africa and from America. This takes weeks. It doesn't take hours. This is the thing.
Yeah.
Now, our economy has modelled itself solely within being members of the single market and customs union, and they are foreign-owned production lines. BMW Mini, Nissan, Ford, they are all foreign, and they will leave if they cannot get those components.
They said that they'd leave if we didn't join the euro. Like, the fact that we're not in, the single market.
But
they are leaving. Sorry, Kieran, 1 second. The new electric Mini is not going to be made in Oxford. That decision's already been made. The new Jaguar Land Rover vehicles are not being made in the United Kingdom. The electric vehicles, they're being made in Slovakia.
And yet a Spanish train company is making all of its new trains in the UK across 5 cities across the North and the Midlands, and Berlin have contracted British buses for. I mean, we could like
FDI is lower than it.
FDI is the second highest in the world,
measured in a pound that's devalued by 18%.
I mean, you look at the bar chart. We are stratospherically above almost any other country.
Okay, Kieran, because these guys can go on for hours. How are you going to be affected if, well, what it looks like now, with Joe Johnson resigning, Theresa May not having the numbers to put her proposal forward, which is some sort of hybrid of the Chequers deal? How are you and your business going to be affected from the day after March 2019 when we drop out?
Right. 2 weeks ago, I was on BBC Inside Out South East. I went to Switzerland, to Zurich, for a documentary to show how it is to import and export goods out of a country outside the customs union. Now, we had to go and get an agent inland. It wasn't on the border. The invoice was wrong for the goods. The agent had to send off an email to the customer saying the invoice is wrong, the weight was wrong. It ended up taking about 3 or 4 hours to do this paperwork. The goods are only worth £300. The customs cost was £150. So the cost of the customs paperwork alone was 50% of the value of the goods. Now, that cost will be passed on to the customer. And the thing is, most of the companies in this country, I think it's about 300,000 companies in this country, only ever dealt with the European Union. And for 25 years, we've never had customs borders. They don't have the experience and the know-how to fill these out online, as Tom claims. The level of inaccuracies and errors on those forms will be so high that nothing will move in and out. Now, if you've got a job at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it has to go out and be in Paris for the next morning, and there's a problem with that invoice, and the customer's gone home, they're not going to get it done in time. You're stuck there till the morning, and you're not going. This is where my job will be made impossible. Now,
but would you say, Kieran, that because we heard a lot of the EU bureaucrats, and we don't want the bureaucracy of the EU, etc. It sounds to me like we're going to be heading into more bureaucracy than we had before, and that's going to be our own creation. Tom says no, but you're the one who actually will have to do it. I'm afraid, Tom, I'm going to have to take Kieran's point of view because he actually does it. Yeah. Kieran, is it going to be more bureaucracy or less?
It'll be massive. It'll be huge amounts of paperwork. Huge. Every single exporter in this country is going to need an agent. We only have about 17 in Dover and Folkestone at the moment. They're already busy enough with the Turkish and the Swiss imports and exports. My agent is always busy, and he always says, can I do the paperwork in a couple of days? It's not so bad if the job's not urgent for an exhibition. But, if the stuff needs to go out that day and be somewhere the next morning, you need it done straight away. Now, the other problem, you go to Dover and Folkestone, 12,000 trucks a day in and out, 6,000 each way. 2 clearing houses, 500 spaces in secure car parks where those trucks have to park to collect their papers. That's where the traffic is going to come from, not from the checks, from collecting the papers that the drivers must travel with. Now, and I'm trying to leave the country, I'm queuing up with those trucks, you know, and a 250-space car park, sorry to go on, a 250-space car park at Customs House or Stop 24 at 20 to 30 minutes a truck for Customs would take 3.5 days to clear that car park.
Okay, look, what do you say? Because I know, and I don't want to put words in Tom's mouth, but what do you say of the people that perhaps are of Tom's persuasion, Brexiteers, who say, yes, now we understand all that, and you're right, those are the technical problems, but there is technology out there that will help solve all these problems. We've got apps, we've got drones, we've got all these things, and we're going to solve all those problems, and you won't even have to stop, you just touch your phone. I mean, we've got Apple, you know, the type of Apple Pay, touch it, near field communication, pling, we know who you are, we know what you're carrying, and off you go.
No, I would ask Tom, name me one border in the world that doesn't trade with another one under some sort of agreement, has an invisible border, and will not have manned customs posts. They do not exist. You cannot, for all the cameras in the world, you cannot replace human beings physically checking the inside and the back of a commercial vehicle.
Tom Harwood.
For goods.
Nothing exists until you invent it. I mean, you could say that about any invention before it was created throughout the history.
Okay, Tom, I don't want to be rude, but you can also say that about unicorns. But, you know, no, I don't. But you're kind of saying, look.
Speaking of unicorns, London has more tech unicorns than any other country in Europe. Actually, the rest of Europe put together.
But you're kind of saying, look, it doesn't exist until you invent it. But the truth is, we're leaving in March. Kieran's got to run his business, and you're telling him, of course it doesn't exist, but because we haven't invented it yet.
I'm not saying it's not invented. I'm saying that the kind of technology.
So how does Kieran get to run his business,
borders,
according to you?
Well, firstly, let's take the point about bureaucracy, where you say that somehow there'll be more bureaucracy if we leave the EU. The number of
I'm not saying Kieran's saying it, and he's on the ground.
The percent of UK companies that trade with the EU is vanishingly small. It's smaller than 10%.
It's 334,000.
It's smaller than 10% of companies in the UK.
Yeah. So
actually, when you take the UK economy and you slice it up, you find
SMEs.
that 80% of the UK economy is domestic. About 10% is trading with third countries that aren't EU, and about 10% is trading with the EU.
You
so
can
because
talk if you want to, but
bureaucracy
let's
might
use the numbers.
rise for that small 10% of the economy doesn't mean that you can not drastically reduce regulation for the 90% of the economy, and the real opportunities for growth and investment and jobs that come out of Brexit aren't so much to do with trade with the EU. They're to do with the domestic regulatory reforms that you can then innovate with, because you're out of the regulatory trap of harmonisation.
Hang on, you're saying 10%. You're basically saying it's a small number of companies. The fact that you're just throwing them into the abyss, that's fine. Let's move on. No. But specifically, hang on. Specifically, Kieran, right, drives parts over for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kieran, you're still there, right?
Yep.
There you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
He drives parts in for the just-in-time. We're talking about Nissan, we're talking about Airbus, we're talking about BMW. Those are not small industries. They rely on that frictionless border. So whatever you mention, it's 10%, it's small. It doesn't sound so small to me when you're talking about these huge corporations that are threatening to leave if they can't do their business properly.
Well, it's amazing that these companies are threatening to leave when they're signing long-term contracts to...
But they're not. We just heard that the BMW electric
I referenced three or four. Just like,
no, you didn't. You referenced once. You talked about trains being built here.
Buses for Berlin. You can go to Guido Fawkes. You can click on our Despite Brexit.
Forgive me for not going to
a completely
partisan.
Sorry, you can. I mean, I'm sure you.
With all due respect,
partisan sites on your side all the time.
No, I don't.
Or whatever.
No, I don't.
You can look at the number of stories that we put out every week that are these Despite Brexit stories, the amount of inward investment.
Well, okay, try these on.
And look at what companies do more than what they say.
Oh, okay, and I am doing that. Bloomberg have reported 250 billion market moves to Amsterdam. 250 billion a day. This is the short-term financing market that's leaving the cities, going from London to Amsterdam. Investment in British financial
and you
services.
Look at Chanel, which let me finish. In London.
Great.
For every example you can give, I can give you two.
Okay, fine,
That's
great.
not true.
I'll keep going. Investment in British financial services fell by 26%. In Germany, it has risen by 64%. France has also doubled. The EMA, the European Medicines Agency, has moved from London to Amsterdam.
Been,
and also,
and
riddle me this, Tom. Why have we got supermarkets stockpiling food in this country? And was that ever advertised to the vote Leave people? Let's do this. Let's vote for Leave so we can stockpile food.
This is such scaremongering. Honestly, it's beneath
It's
you.
not scaremonger. It's a fact.
You can talk to the supermarkets. I have. And they are stockpiling in warehouses. They're running out of warehouses to stock not just the food itself, but the ingredients to make the foods.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go on, Kieran.
Sorry, I was listening there. Right.
Good.
Talking about the supermarkets and the food. Now, I've transported food flavourings, the processing plants that go into crisps and pot noodles and even hot cross buns. They're Class 3 flammable liquids in their pure forms. They need transporting with a specialist licence, with an appropriate vehicle with the right insurance. And this stuff is normally mega urgent when they ask you to pick up 500 litres of this stuff from Germany and drop it back to Colchester the next morning on a 10 to 12 hour transit time, because they're literally about to run out. If they run out, then the food production line stops. Here's another one, salads. Most of it coming out of the Netherlands. All the Dutch trucks running in at night time, using the tunnel to get in. You know, you've got your oranges and your cucumbers coming out with the greenhouses down in Almeria in the south of Spain, double manned. We get up on a 2-day transit time, so it gets onto our supermarket shelves. This stuff only has a shelf life of a maximum of 4 to 5 days, maybe a week. When it's stuck in a queue in Calais and it can't get in, it will only take a few days before that starts to run out. That's why they're stockpiling. That's why they're seriously worried.
Kieran,
you know,
Kieran,
yeah.
I've got to go to break, but it's been a pleasure to have your input. Now, I know that Brexiteers listening to this will call it scaremongering. My question to them is, Kieran's on the ground. Where are you? And why would Kieran want to scaremonger if that's the business that he's doing? Why would he be looking at his business, that's at the edge of a precipice, right, if it wasn't true? So, Kieran, anyway, thank you for your call.
Thank you very much.
Kieran, the van driver. I'm pretty sure you can follow him on Twitter. Tom, that's one of the problems I have. I know it can get very passionate, but I'm still waiting to understand, because every time you said to me earlier, for every fact you give me about companies leaving, I can give you 2 facts of things getting better. But my question to you is, if Brexit is this golden opportunity, and let's say it is for the moment, can you explain to me why people like Kieran, who's on the ground, don't see it that way? Why Mr. Airbus thinks that it's going to be bad for his business? Why is Mr. BMW thinking that it's going to be bad? Why are BMA, for example, British Medical Association, right? People we sort of traditionally respect, doctors, and their opinions. Most people have come out and said, look, this is not great. You're shaking your head, you're smiling, and it's the reaction I get from every Brexiteer. Oh, it's Project Fear. What's in it for them? Why are they trying to scare us, in your opinion?
These are organisations that have invested literally billions of pounds in their lobbying fronts in Brussels. They are in with the European Commission, and the big businesses and the big associations really quite like how the EU runs. And
I was kind of hoping for an answer that didn't involve putting on a tinfoil hat.
Really? I mean, come on.
Seriously. Seriously. You're telling me that the
lobbying industry in Brussels is worth billions upon billions upon billions of euros.
As is the Westminster one.
Actually, I think what you'll find is that the lobbying climate in Brussels, where I've worked, and Westminster, where I've worked, is just so different.
The IEA is selling meetings with ministers. Government.
I mean, that's
ministers.
not true. That's actually libelous.
No, I don't think it is.
They are not selling meetings with ministers. That's ridiculous. Anyway,
have a look.
We're talking about tinfoil hats.
It's not me
saying this. We were talking about tinfoil hats earlier.
Without my tinfoil hat on, I look at Brexiteers, and I've had so much of Brexiteers calling me a liberal, a metropolitan elite, or whatever new thing they've come up with this way. But I look at Jacob Rees-Mogg. His company's not going to suffer because he's made sure that they've got an office out in Dublin.
He hasn't opened an office in Dublin. He opened a new fund in Dublin.
2 new funds.
Which means
he's got a booming, expanding company under Brexit Britain.
Fine, and good for him. I'm not bemoaning that. But the truth is, if Brexit flops completely, his customers are going to be fine because they'll be able to trade out of Dublin. John Redwood has been advising people to move, and Lord Ashcroft, I believe, have been advising people to move their funds out of the UK into Malta. And I'm looking around thinking, hang on, these guys are selling me Brexit. most of them non-domiciles in this country. Newspapers.
Most of the people who are selling Brexit are non-doms.
Okay, let me clarify that. A lot of the newspaper owners who have sold Brexit are non-domiciled in this country. But basically, I'm looking around, I'm going, who's selling me this? Who's kind of going, Brexit is good for you? Let me finish the question and then you can come in. I'm not going to go into whataboutery. What I'm trying to understand is, what have they got to lose? And I'm thinking that, actually, if Brexit really is detrimental to this fabric of this country, Jacob Rees-Mogg's not going to suffer. John Redwood's not going to suffer. Boris Johnson's not going to suffer. Lord Ashcroft's not going to suffer.
You've seen the demographics of the people that voted leave, right? You cannot pretend this is an elite conspiracy. I've seen all of these tinfoil hat conspiracies on Twitter about...
I'm sorry, but I didn't use the word conspiracy.
EU tax law that was going to come in, and that's why everyone wanted to vote
Tom,
leave.
I did not use the word conspiracy. I'm asking you, what have they got to lose?
Right back from before Maastricht.
You can keep talking, but if you don't answer my question...
Let's look at... Sorry,
let's
look at the political history of the Eurosceptic movement in this country.
No, let's
not.
Where
is it
answer
been
my question. What have they got to lose?
The people who have more capital have much more capital to lose. That's why the rich tended to vote Remain, because if the people that are doing very well, thank you, under the economy today.
What's Jacob Rees going to lose if Brexit fails in this country?
What do you mean if Brexit fails? I think you probably have a different definition to me.
If unemployment rises, if economically we're much worse off.
To be fair to Jacob Rees-Mogg, he did say live on Channel 4 that it'll be up to 50 years before we see all the benefits of Brexit.
I mean,
so you've got to give it 5 decades.
That's not what he said.
That's exactly what he said. There's a video of it
discussing
online.
the backbench MP for North
The
Somerset.
chairman of the European Research Group. Don't just call him a little backbencher. You know, he is very influential in Parliament.
You'd love him. If he was very influential in Parliament, then we would not be having the Brexit.
I've got to bring this to a close because I'm being stared down by my producer, who says you've talked long enough now. It's time to be quiet. So one word answers: do we think that Theresa May is going to get her way and sell her deal, Tom?
I think it'll be voted down initially, but then a second one that looks very similar will probably be voted through.
Voted through. So you think we are going to leave March 2019 on some sort of fudge deal?
Yeah.
Okay. Jason?
Nope, she hasn't got a chance because politically she's a dead duck and she can't accept what the EU've got on the table.
So what's going to happen then? Parliament rejects it and then what?
The Parliament has a meaningful vote and they will say, no, we're not voting for a no deal because 17.4 million people did not vote for a hard cliff edge Brexit. Therefore, they have to go back to the people. And
there's
the people
no parliamentary
will say.
for that. There's literally none. Unless
there's
the
plenty of time.
Unless
it's
the
not too
executive
late.
Let's not open that again. I said one word answers and I gave you all sentences. It remains for me to say thank you very much for your time to Jason Hunter and to Tom Harwood from Guido Fawkes. Thank you very much. My producer is in my ear now saying, what did you tell me to say? I need to apologise to Tom because what? Do I need to apologise to you, Tom?
I don't think so. I've had a ball.
He's had a ball. Well, I apologise if I maybe... Oh, it's because two against one, I'm being told.
Oh, no, that's all right.
Tom's used to it.
I mean, it's the media. We're used to, berating of Brexiteers.
Okay. Tom, you've been fantastic. Honestly, thank you very much for giving up your time.
Been a pleasure.
Really do appreciate it. Jason, I really appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much both. I really do appreciate you giving up your Saturdays to hear me rant about Brexit.